Yet another Phoenix real estate statistic coming in low. So, great. It's great news. Let's check it out. What is going on, you guys? We've got our year to date dollar volume coming in 24% below last year. And it's not a huge surprise, right? We know that transactions are lower this year, but we did start off the year pretty quick. So you would think that we wouldn't be 24% below last year, but we sure are. So this is this year to date in terms of dollar volume, so the amount of sales volume that has taken place over the year. And then we've got 2022 and 2021, obviously this being much lower than those last 2 years and just ahead of 2020. Which is interesting because in 2020, we actually had more transactions taking place than we do this year. This is the number of sales that we had year to date in 2020. And then we're well below that this year. But the difference is that prices have gone up so much that our dollar volume now is higher than it was in 2020, even though we're doing fewer transactions. So that's an interesting thing to note. However, we're 24% below last year, and certainly I don't see this number really going up that much higher for the rest of the year. I think the number of transactions and sales that we're going to see is probably pretty minimal as we finish out the year, but that's just my guess. Put it in the comments. Let me know what you guys think. So moving on, what else is going on out there? Well, last week we got the PCE, that's the Fed's preferred inflation gauge. And, I mentioned keep an ear out for that because that may change what the Fed wants to do. The last time they met, they said they weren't raising the federal funds rate. However, they weren't promising that there would be a cut. And they also said rates may stay higher for longer. So we now got this information that the PCE rose 3.9% year over year in August, which is down from a revised 4.3% in July, meeting expectations. The deflator rose 0.1% month over month, down 0.2% in July, and below expectations of 0.2%. But basically, this is the first time in 2 years a PCE has stood below 4%, which is a milestone, and really showing that the Fed's campaign has been working to try to bring down inflation. So that is good news. But they were very cautious in telling us last time, don't get too excited. We're not going to be cutting rates anytime soon. And this pause doesn't mean this is what we're doing from here on out. So this information is going to play a role for sure in what they decide to do at the next meeting. Already seeing an article about this. Fed's Bowman cautions rising energy prices could stall inflation progress and calls for higher rates. So keep that in mind as we get to the next meeting. Maybe they would hike the rate again. I don't know. But we have to keep an eye on what's going to happen there. And also remember, this does not affect mortgage rates directly. This just affects what happens in the markets, and then therefore mortgage rates react to that. And so just because the federal funds rate might go up, it doesn't mean mortgage rates will go up. So what's going on in mortgage rates? Well, the rate forecast for October is higher for longer, according to this article. And they're saying that the Fed's higher for longer keeps pressure on mortgages. They broke through 7% faster than anticipated. And kind of where we're at today is that those mid to high sevens, last I heard from my friends in the mortgage business. And this is saying economists agree that the pandemic era 3% rates aren't coming back. I would agree with that. I think that was certainly an anomaly. We're not going to see 3% rates coming back, maybe not in our lifetime. Who knows? But that is not something realistic to anticipate. So if you're someone holding out on buying a house because you want to see a 3% rate again, I would gently let go of that hope and reassess what that could look like for you at maybe 5%. That would be a really great place for us to get, although I don't know when or if we are getting to 5% rates. And so this is basically saying over the remainder of the year, we'll be within a quarter point of where we are now. That's their prediction. Lawrence Yun, who is the chief economist at the National Association of Realtors, thinks that that's a real possibility and rates could go to 8%. So that's the outlook on rates. Doesn't feel too warm and fuzzy, unfortunately, but That's the news out there, you guys. So what's happening in Phoenix? We're going to get into the CMI. I know that's what you guys love to see. But I did want to mention something. I saw this article about Seattle residents seeking affordable living options. We all know that Seattle is one of those places that is on the more expensive end, as well as, San Francisco and kind of that Pacific Northwest area is pretty expensive. But this is saying that as folks in Seattle move out of the city, they are moving to a couple different places. So apparently people are moving out of Denver. 19% of local site users are using the search tool to look to move somewhere else. Their top pick in the state is staying in Spokane, but their out-of-state pick is Phoenix, Arizona. So I found that interesting. Although our dollar volume is 24% below last year and our transactions are low, and it feels like the market is moving along at a snail's pace and rates are increasing, we still got a bunch of folks from Seattle that are interested coming to Phoenix. So that's keeping our demand going. But, it's true. I will say from my experience, most of the folks that I talk to out there that are purchasing homes are relocating from another state. That's a big part of our demand here in Phoenix. I know that to be true. So let's look at demand. What do we got going on? It is still low. It's hanging around that 75 range. If you are new here, I'm a Cromford Report subscriber, and they have the best information, in my opinion, of what's going on here in Phoenix. And this is their Cromford Market Index. So this helps us look at the supply and demand factors in our market. Anything over 110 is considered a seller's market. 143.6, we can say that Phoenix Metro is in a seller's market, but that demand is 25% below normal because they measure that normal range at around 100. So our demand is kind of hanging there. Like I said, it hasn't been dropping too fast. It's just been in that 74 to 76 range, it seems like, every week. Supply is the thing that we need to keep an eye on, and that really hasn't been the factor that I've looked at as much lately, but it's starting to creep up. We were at 49-ish, 50 the last few weeks, now at 52. So the more supply we get, and if demand continues to go down, that's when we find ourselves in a balanced market. If we do see more more supply than demand, that's when we find ourselves in a buyer's market. So this is where we stand. This is Phoenix Metro as a whole. So let's look at the various cities. I know many of you have asked about specific cities, and I'm sorry I can't provide that. This is all that the Cromford Report has, and this isn't data that I'm able to manipulate in any way, so I can't give you anything beyond what they share. And the reason they only have these 17 largest cities is because the way they calculate the Cromford Market Index, there has to be a sufficient amount of data to do that, and they don't have that for some of the smaller cities. There's just not enough data to use. So that's why we've got these 17 largest cities. But you'll see here, we got a lot of red arrows, and this is all based on the standpoint from the view of a seller. So a downward red arrow means that's not good news for a seller. It means you lost ground. That means that buyers in that city gained some advantage. And then those green arrows, the two that we got, one in Cave Creek and one in Tempe, both of those are saying that the sellers gained the advantage. So month over month, 1% and 2%. So by very little did those change. But what we're seeing here is an overall softening of the market. If you take the average change month over month of all of these cities, we saw that it was about negative 9.4%. And last week when we measured it, it was negative 7.8%. So we're still seeing that acceleration towards a buyer's market and seeing sellers lose ground in the majority of the cities. Chandler's been at the top for quite a while, but you'll see every week they're losing quite a bit of ground, 28% month over month this week. Fountain Hills didn't change all that much, but it did go down. Glendale's one of the ones that saw a little bit more on the month over month change, as well as Gilbert and Mesa too. So we've got 13 out of the 17 cities that are still in a seller's market. even though we're seeing all these red arrows. And Buckeye, Queen Creek, Maricopa, all of these down here are in a balanced market since they are between that 90 to 110 range, and we don't have anything yet in a buyer's market. But if things continue, especially with this change of 15, 16, 10% month over month, we may see these cities in a buyer's market fairly soon. So if you are a buyer looking in any of those cities, Buckeye, Goodyear, Maricopa, Queen Creek, get ready. You might have a little bit more of an opportunity to get a deal, especially as we get closer into the holiday season. Oftentimes sellers are a little bit more willing to negotiate if they want to sell their home before the end of the year. In my experience, that's just what I've seen. It doesn't mean that that is always the case, but something to keep in mind. And if you are a seller in those cities, keep this in mind too. You want to price correctly and make sure that you are willing to negotiate with buyers to get the home sold before you get into a buyer's market, because it's going to be quite a bit more difficult if that continues, if the trend continues that way. They do mention, the Cromford report, that supply is well below normal in most areas that we have, but we are seeing that Maricopa has supply that is over 100 on the index. So that means that, as we go back to here and we look at the supply index for all of the Phoenix area at 52, but Maricopa is over 100. So that means they have more supply than normal. And also Casa Grande is in the same boat. They also say that Litchfield Park looks to be close to coming to 100 for its supply as well. So those are three cities where if you are a buyer, you may find more options there, and sellers may be more inclined to bring their prices down if they have more competition. Maricopa, Casa Grande, and Litchfield Park. So note that as a buyer. And then some places where we have very low supply, Anthem, Chandler, El Mirage, and Gilbert are the cities that they're calling out where that supply is pretty low. And as a seller, you have an advantage. And as a buyer, you may not have as many to choose from, and you may need to be a little bit more competitive. So this is where we are with all the major cities here in Phoenix. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of an idea of what to do with your strategy and that kind of thing if you are looking to buy or sell right now. So what do you guys think is going to happen next? I'm kind of curious to hear, what your predictions are for the rest of the year. And if you want to hear more about my predictions, check out this video right here. Thanks for joining. I'll see you guys next week.